Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
And my name is Dyl. Welcome to our 2025 Best Picture Revisiting Series.
Here are the 10 nominees for Best Motion Picture of the Year.
Honora.
The Brutalist.
A Complete Unknown.
Conclave.
Dune, Part 2.
Amelia Perez.
I'm Still Here.
Nickel Boys.
The Substance.
And Wicked.
Welcome into a very special episode because today we're going to be talking about Dune Part 2. Just kidding. Obviously, we are talking about Wicked. Got Wicked mug. We're dressed in pink and green. And excited to talk about one of the, probably the, cultural sensation of the season. Wouldn't you say, Dyl?
Yeah, I mean, it's really weird how Wicked's had this trajectory throughout the whole season because clearly this is one of the most beloved Broadway shows of all time. Yet for its film adaptation, it seemed like the reactions, at least early on before the film was seen by anyone, was really muted. And then once the movie debuted to critics and fans alike, it really exploded. And it's kind of like, why wasn't this a thing all season long?
And I want to give you credit for that because last year, at a very crucial point, after the trailer came out, you had said, I still think that this could be a thing. I still think this could be a thing. Even though everyone was just dumping on the trailer all year long, really, you kind of held true that this was going to be a big thing. But before we jump into all of our thoughts, I want to know what's everyone's relationship to Wicked, the Broadway show, not the movie.
So I grew up with a grandma who is head over heels for all things typical musicals. So she does unironically love cats. And she really
so does Dylan.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah.
My grandma will get along. So I grew up basically whenever I was in her car, either the Cats soundtrack or the Wicked soundtrack was playing. So
or the Beatles.
Or the Beatles. Yeah. So it was kind of the soundtrack of my childhood. I also am a dancer, so everyone was competing One Short Day, Defying Gravity. I knew the songs really, really well. I grew up with all the music. I saw the musical, which Matt is holding. I saw it once with my grandma and absolutely loved it.
On the other hand, I was a musical theater kid. I've always been a huge musical theater nerd. I did theater through all of high school, all of my childhood, did part of it. I did musical theater through part of college. My hot take in that community is that I don't think Wicked is a very good show. Sorry, Mug, I'm betraying you.
Sorry, my grandma.
Yeah, sorry, Ciarra's grandma, if you're watching the video. I have never been a big fan of Wicked. That said, I do think that the music is phenomenal. I have issues with the story. I have issues with the characters. I do think Stephen Schwartz is one of the great musical theater songwriters of all time. And I think that the music is so good that people forget that it's a poorly written Wizard of Oz fan fiction ripoff of Harry Potter. Yes, I do know that the book was written before the Harry Potter books. I do understand that. However, it would not have been made into a musical if Harry Potter was not the zeitgeist, because the idea of making a Broadway musical about witches going to magical school and staying together and all of that is very directly because Harry Potter was the zeitgeist at the time. That's why the musical exists.
Well, to pull a quote from the movie, let me tell you the whole story because we got to flash back to 2022 because my local theater, they were doing this touring production of Wicked. It stopped by and, as a lover of movies and musicals, I wanted to attend to see what all the buzz was because you always hear about Wicked of how huge it is and how many people love it. You're okay, this has to be something good. And I've talked with Matt about this before, but I find the stage version of Wicked to be very, very underwhelming. All the songs are so unmemorable. The sets were very minimal. It's there wasn't much about them. And then as someone who loves dance, there was no choreography. A show like Les Mis makes sense because of the choreography not being as much, but at least the production I saw of Wicked, they really weren't dancing that much. And I was just what's going on here? So then you fast forward a little bit and we get to last year. And before the first trailer came out, I was projecting Wicked Part 1 to do massive things for award season. That trailer comes and yeah, not very good, but John M. Chu should have been the clue here because, he hasn't gotten much Oscar love yet, but he's such a respected director in this musical genre, and he always brings his A game to this stuff. And like this thing, it's going to have real singers, it's going to have real Broadway talent involved. And it sounded like a recipe for success. But as we've talked about numerous times, that trailer really, really didn't look great to me. Even as someone who likes musicals, I find the positives in all the bad ones, like Cats, Dear Evan Hansen. There's at least something there that like sparks out to me. But the trailer for Wicked seemed devoid of everything that I was hoping for it to have and felt very akin to the stage play. And that's why when the movie actually came out in November, it proved everyone wrong, because somehow slicing this story down the middle and adapting only Act 1, stretching the runtime to be longer than what the stage show itself is, turned out to be like the best decision there is ever. Because like True's creative direction gives these songs room to breathe and allows them to like be fully realized, and you don't feel like you're rushing through everything. And all these new elements, I found that really heightened the overall experience of Wicked. And I mean, I've seen this movie now 4 times and it gets better upon each rewatch. So I mean, that's the feat of a great movie musical.
I think it's crazy to say, like, we all have sort of different takes on the Broadway show, because I know that you really like it, songs and show. I love the songs. I don't love the show. I agree with you. Thank you for saying there's not enough goddamn movement on stage.
No, and I think with Wicked still being on Broadway, it's just the same show replicated over and over, right? There's no like original version.
No,
okay, yeah.
it's
You saw
you
the
saw the
Broadway
Broadway
version,
version.
probably with less props, but like and
Mhm.
sets.
But
still.
So I've always thought your take that the music in Wicked is not good is crazy, because I think the music's phenomenal here. And it makes people forget that the story's not very good. But I want to be very clear here. I want to be very clear. Despite the fact that I am a Broadway doubter of the Wicked show, I think that this is an excellent movie. And while I think the same core problems remain, I think that everything with Shiz University is the dumbest shiz that has ever been written.
Urban shiz.
Yeah, it's terrible. I think that's just so dumb. But John Chu he's delivering like a musical fantasia that feels like the type of thing that Arthur Freed only could ever dream about when he was producing MGM musicals back on the lot in the golden era. I mean, he got his first producing credit with The Wizard of Oz, and then went on to make basically like 40 years worth of the most grand musicals ever to be imagined. And it feels like John Chu's taking a page from that. He's really building on the legacy of The Wizard of Oz. I think it's phenomenal filmmaking and has great respect for the source material. I feel like there's not a single fan of the original show who could look at this and go, they didn't do a good enough job with that. Like, they did every single thing that they possibly could in this while still building it into something more cinematic. They weren't dogmatic about, it has to be like this because it was like that on stage. They make it cinematic. They build it out. They add things to it and make it feel like a real movie and not just a filmed version of the stage show.
I think just overall that it's a great adaptation of Wicked itself. Like the book to the stage show are very different, and the stage show to the movie I feel like are also different because things are fleshed out. I think the best thing about it, the thing that worried me the most initially, was that the Wicked movie was, I feel like, teased for years. Like I feel like it was like the Wicked movie's coming, and I was like 15 and like in high school, suddenly now getting like actually into musicals and like doing musicals, and everyone was like, oh, that's gonna be so bad. And I remember that at like 15, and now I'm 25 and it finally came out. So I felt like it was just going to be bad because that's what everyone was thinking for so long. It kept getting delayed or like, so I remember when you were first like mentioning that people were excited for it, that I kind of was saving my soul. I was like, no, don't have expectations, Ciarra. Like, you never know. It's probably going to be bad. Like, I feel like so many times I have like all this excitement built around like one movie, and then it comes out and it just is super sad to me because it doesn't do well or it's not as good as I thought. And I find myself like still rooting for it, even though it's clearly not going to be anything in the award season and even just in like the public opinion. Mm-hmm. But with this one, I really held myself back, and Matt went to see it at an early screener, and I obviously couldn't come, and he came home and he was like, that was amazing. You are going to be floored. And I think that was the first time that I actually let myself feel excited for the movie. I had like faked excitement with my grandma because she was just so excited. Also came out on her birthday. Sorry, grandma. Came out on her birthday this year. It's the second part's coming out on her birthday next year. Like, it's literally made for her. We saw it together. I just, anyways, long story short,
Yeah.
I finally got to be excited for it. And then I mean, I saw it with my grandma. Like, my grandma's my everything. And it was just phenomenal.
Yeah, leading up to Wicked, I was also not as excited as I would have hoped to be just because of someone who loves musicals, especially musicals that are really going for it. But I'm happy to say that Chu and his creative team really did an excellent job of amplifying all of this stuff for the cinematic medium because, like, the production design, it pops here in the cinematic medium. The costumes, while they may not be the most flashy stuff, they really help to immerse you into the world of Oz. And then, like, Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, these are perfect casting. Like, I couldn't retroactively even imagine anyone else being in these two roles. At least of like the long list that there was for like who was auditioning for these parts. I don't know. I find them wonderful and I just really like this movie. So I'm so excited to talk about its 10 nominations that I got the Oscars, even more so than like what people who are really high on it were projecting.
Like, I think one of the reasons why I was not overly hyped about this, while Cynthia Erivo seemed like the best casting possible, she is one of the greatest vocalists in the history of Broadway. I don't think it was possible to look at that Ariana Grande casting and be like, yeah, this is gonna go over well. You know,
She was like a knit kid.
yeah, the only thing that I had in my mind was like Kat from Victorious and her terrible role in Don't Look Up. I love Don't Look Up. She is the worst part of that movie. She shows up for 2 minutes and it's just like, holy shit, this girl can't act.
Yeah.
And I was floored. I was floored. I guess we could talk about Ariana Grande now. It feels weird to talk about her before Cynthia Erivo, but this is like a perfect kind of transition into that because I thought that was the worst casting ever until I saw it, and literally within 10 seconds, I was like, I was wrong. I was wrong. I was so
Her
wrong.
little bubble.
This is so, yeah. As soon as she starts floating down in the bubble and you're hearing the like, let us be glad, I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, this is phenomenal. Best casting. Like, I never expected to be here saying that she is my second favorite performance of the year, only behind Mikey Madison. I think Ariana Grande is fantastic. She is giving theater kid energy in the best way. And when I first saw the movie, the first thing that I said was like, this feels like the role that she's been practicing for in the mirror, in the shower, every single day for her entire life. And with her interviews about the movie, like, that's been confirmed. Like, that's just actually what she's been preparing for her whole life. She has been singing these songs in the shower since she was a kid. She has been,
I mean, she
like,
literally wrote Popular into one of
yeah,
her songs.
yeah, like she loves this show and her passion is so clear for the material. And I think the thing that I love most of all with this, you know, beyond the beauty of her voice, the hilarity of how she plays the comedic scenes, it really feels like she understands the nuances of the role and it sets her apart from Kristen Chenoweth. Kristen Chenoweth's version of Glinda, I think, is really funny. It's very fun. It's entertaining, but she plays the role as sort of like a ditzy, clueless, popular girl. Whereas Ariana Grande seems very aware of every single action she's taking. Like, this is a character who is calculated in her manipulation. She's very understanding of where she sits in the social order. And I think that it's really interesting going forward into Act Two, into For Good. It's going to be interesting to see how she plays that dynamic because, at least in part one, what I loved about her performance, more than just the silliness of it, was that she seems to truly understand that she will benefit from not rocking the boat. And I sort of loved that she's being torn between, am I good or am I on top? And I really liked that.
Even just like when the behind the scenes stuff was coming out, she was having the best time. She was living out her childhood dream, and it's so wonderful to see an actor then in the movie living out their dream in the way that she did. And she's so funny. I was never a Nickelodeon kid. I never watched that kind of stuff. I was more like on Family Channel. But I saw clips of her and I always remember thinking that she was funny. Like, she had comedic timing, she had this and that. And then I was never a huge fan of her music. I mean, I don't listen to a lot of music to begin with, so that's not really saying much, but I never loved her music. I never idolized her in the same way that a lot of my friends did, but I always, you know, appreciated her for what she was doing. But this is the first time that I really I get it. Like, I get her fandom. I get her appeal to everyone because she's just so fun and ridiculous in it. And it's interesting the way that she played Glinda into, or Galinda, depending on when I'm talking about her. Uh, she made her into the actual kind of mean girl. Whereas I feel like with Mean Girls, with when the original Wicked production came out, there was like a stereotype of mean girls that I never felt was reflected in my day-to-day life as a girl. But this Glinda, I feel like I went to high school with so many of her. And that I mean that in a loving way too. It's not like in a, oh, I knew people like her. Like I knew people like her and I understood people like her, and we had real conversations and I could actually see her and her just sheer like I don't know what the word is, just whimsinism.
Hmm.
Whimsinism. Uh so it made it super realistic and I just loved it.
But yeah, like Matt was saying, before Wicked really came out, there was a lot of backlash for Ariana Grande's casting. Like, it seemed like people wrote her off due to her Nickelodeon career, her pop career. But like you're saying, Ciarra, people kind of forget that she is funny. She has this magnetic stage presence. She has a strong personality. And I mean, I'm not the biggest Ariana Grande fan, but like, I even knew this was her dream role for forever. And that's one of the reasons why when we did that episode in person, I was like, Grande's top 10. Like, maybe if the movie's real, she can get in, but I don't have her in personally yet. But like, this is the performance I was kind of expecting from her from all the way back at the start of the season, because like this is the role that actors want to jump at. They get to be funny, they get to sing, they get to wear cool outfits, and they get to have a blast inside their role. And I know there's been a lot of people, these are more like negative detractors of Grande's performance, just kind of comparing her like, oh, she's doing what Ryan Gosling did as Ken last year. But to me, that seems very off because like Ken is someone that you're laughing at. Glinda is someone that you're laughing with. And I really liked what you said before, Matt, of how she's adding these extra layers to Glinda, where it's not just the meanie pants, the one who thinks she gets everything in life. No, she's understanding what's happening, and you can feel the turns throughout the story. Like, that was one of my issues when I watched the stage production. Is like, I never really bought the transition of how she actually cares for Elphaba, but here from the get-go you can tell she's envious of her. It's not, oh, she's stealing things from me. She's like, no, that's who I want to be. And then throughout the story, it's connecting more, becoming friends, becoming sisters. And I'm very excited to see where Grande takes his character and for good later this year.
I have to apologize to you, Dylan, because I think I like laughed in your face when you said Ariana Grande was top 10 for Best Supporting Actress because, I didn't see it. I had seen Wicked multiple times, and I thought of Glinda as being like a goofball nothing role. I thought she was just there to like make the audience laugh, sing a little cute song,
Some high
and
notes.
yeah, hit some high notes and then, fuck off somewhere else. Like that's what I thought of. That's what I expected from Ariana Grande. I thought she'd be funny, but nothing substantial, but she really proved me
Yeah.
wrong.
Even just
Um,
in No One Mourns the Wicked. You
yeah.
can see the double-edged sword that she's facing in
Mhm.
that song just from her eyes, even not knowing the story if you didn't.
And I think a lot of credit has to go to Ariana Grande's team around her because she put in the work and like she got an acting trainer, she had a coach, like she had people that were working with her to make sure that she was able to deliver those nuances. Now, I want to talk about Cynthia Erivo, but I know that you like really connected with this performance. So,
Yeah, and it's funny because you kind of had to remind me of that too. I've always loved Cynthia Erivo. She has some songs that in the dance world, they're just everywhere. People improv to them, make combos to them, and compete with them, which is like the real golden song in the dance world if you can do all three of those. And her voice is just absolutely stunning. When I saw that she was in Widows, when we saw that at TIFF, I was so excited to see her acting. And I remember you were kind of like, why are you so excited? Like I didn't know the color purple at
well,
that time.
I didn't know who Cynthia Erivo
Yeah,
was when Widows came
when
out.
Widows came out,
Yeah.
and I was so excited to see her in it. And she was so different from what I thought she would be, but I just have always loved her. And she's silly sometimes. She's got those nails, and she's got the voice, and like just some of the behind the scenes things with her dogs and everything are just it's so funny. But I've always just loved her, and so I knew going in that she was going to bring an incredible amount of depth to Elphaba, which I was excited for because having only seen the show in real life once and hearing the music growing up. I'm very visual, but seeing the show once, I felt like Elphaba was a little emo and I didn't connect with her in that way. She just seemed like a depressed green person. And I know that sounds very not, I don't know, shallow, but to me, I connected more with Glinda. I connected more with the choreography and the story of it. But in this one, you can feel all of Elphaba's feelings from the get-go. You can understand what she's been through. and the masks that she's put on herself, even with taking care of her sister and with how her father feels about her, everything that Erivo does is just so strong and so emotional. And it's all just in a simple little look of her eyes. It's not like she's over dramatizing the role or making it like, woe is me, I was born green, it's not my fault. It ain't easy being green, like Kermit the Frog or anything. She really nailed it. And even if she didn't have the green skin, you could believe that this was someone who was severely traumatized by just the way that people were treated her whole life.
Yeah, on my end, I think like I've said before, Cynthia Erivo is one of the great Broadway vocalists, potentially like very possibly top 5 Broadway vocalists to ever live, to ever work. She has a voice. Anytime she opens her mouth, I just melt. I think she has one of the most beautiful voices ever. Um, I just feel like Elphaba's real arc takes place mostly in the second act. And while I totally see what you're saying with like the subtleties and the emotions of the role, I do feel like Elphaba in Act 1 of Wicked is a very inactive character up until Defying Gravity. Defying Gravity is the first moment where she's actually taken things into her own hands. Otherwise, she's kind of just like timid and shy. She has glimmers of like, the poppies and everything and taking the lion away from the classroom.
Yeah. Even
But
just in her fight against taking Dr. Dillman out. Like she fights, but then she's told to sit down and she does.
exactly, and I do think that for Act 1, Elphaba's character arc is so much more of like you are small, you are not allowed to defy gravity. And I think that she's going to be one of the best performances of next year. I don't know how much I can get behind her as like I have no problem with her nomination here, but she'd be close to the bottom of my ballot for the Best Actress 5, just because I don't feel like she has the same material. But that said, next year, I think that No Good Deed in Wicked for Good is going to define her whole performance. She is going to that is going to be a whole other level of like,
Even just that final note, I can like
yeah,
hear it.
it is going to
Beautiful.
be earth-shattering.
Well, this is the fun part of this channel is because we have two completely different takes. I think if I had a ballot, Erivo would be my favorite performance of anyone in all 4 of these acting categories because I find this performance to be so compelling. And like we all knew her vocals would be on point, as y'all have talked about. She has such a career over in the music genre, but like inside this film, it's still setting new heights. Like how do you watch The Wizard and I and not just be blown away, goosebumps running down your whole body? But what really stood out to me upon all of these rewatches of Wicked is that the best part about her performance is her acting. She is the heart of this whole movie, and like we see her belt those songs in like a corset like it's Any Given Tuesday, but the emotion, a lot of what you were talking about there, Ciarra, is like where this performance I think has been vastly underrated throughout the whole award season. We see right from the get-go, we can tell she's wearing all of this stuff on her shoulders. It's oddly kind of similar to what Adrian Brody's doing at the opening of The Brutalist. Like we don't really need to know the context. We just know you've been through some shit and you're showing us to us without all the additional context. And the further that we get it throughout the film, we see some of those layers because she puts up this tough girl persona, but sometimes the cracks break. Like it's at the Ozdas Ballroom and that whole number, which is apparently partly improv and partly was scripted, and like that stuff that's really really great work. From what everyone says that she's going to do in Act 2, like if she's this great in Act 1, I'm just so excited to see what she's going to do in the next film. And this thing isn't as much about the performance. I guess this kind of goes more to the script and the creative direction as well, but I feel like the adaptation for the film to kind of change Elphaba's story greatly emphasizes how impactful of a performance this can be from top to bottom, because like in the stage show, it's very strongly hinted at least from interviews and from people inside the production, that Elphaba's journey is more akin to like the Jewish experience. Now here in the film, they're switching that a little bit and making it more commentary on what it's like to be black and where you face racism, colorism, and the way that you're other just because of the way that you're born. I know that kind of fits into both of those, but at least in terms of that experience, it's sometimes I guess can be on the nose, but I think it's what it makes it very effective, and especially when you tie in all the real world comparisons to what has been going on in the last few years. It's super effective, and I think it helps to elevate.
Will get a little bit negative for a little bit because we got to talk editing. And this is one place that I think this movie could have used a lot of work. On a scene by scene basis, I think the edit is pretty phenomenal. You know, if you were to take one chunk of the movie, if you were to show me the what is this feeling sequence, I would say it's some of my favorite editing of the year. You know, scene by scene, fantastic. It uses cuts in an interesting way to shape the movement of scenes. I think it really does a great job of combining with the camera movement with the dancing to create momentum. There's so much that the editing is doing that elevates it on a scene by scene basis. But when you look at the whole scope of the thing, this movie is so long. It's so long, and there's so many moments that while individually they're well edited, I just was left thinking, why is this in the movie? Why is this 2 hours and 40 minutes? Like the whole musical, the whole musical on stage is 2 hours, 20 minutes or so with a 15-minute intermission. 2 hours and 40 minutes for Act One. That's insane. And I do appreciate that John M. Chu has an understanding that Broadway fandoms are fucking insane. And if he cut so much as one goddamn line, they would have had his head on a fucking spike. But, the issue isn't that they didn't cut anything out from the show. The issue is how much they added in. And I get that it's all fan service. It's meant to, you know, really be a gift to the people that love this show. But there's so much that they add, and they should have picked and chose a little bit more than they did. Like, so many scenes are not doing anything except adding extra runtime. Like, why is Defying Gravity a 16-minute sequence in the film when it's only 6 minutes on stage? Why did we take 5 minutes to decide on the color of the fucking bricks on the yellow brick road? Why do we need that scene?
So that people go,
It's like, you know, the whole movie is like designed to have scenes where people are Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen.
Yep.
And they should have, you know, so many great films have these big fandoms, and what they do is they put out a theatrical cut and then they give the fan service on the extended. You know, I love my Lord of the Rings extended editions. I love them. I love them, love them, love them. I only ever watch the extended versions because I'm a fan. If I was not a fan, I would probably prefer the theatrical cuts because it cuts out the stuff that you don't need for the story. You know, whatever the Lord of the Rings equivalent of 5 minutes on the yellow brick fucking road, we don't need it. We don't need it. I think that here they gave the theatrical cut is the extended cut that typically we would get. I think that you could have cut 40 minutes out of this without losing a single thing.
I think he did it solely because he only really wanted to make it for people who would enjoy the movie. He wasn't doing it for the accolades or for the awards or for the critics. I feel like he himself, and I'm not like defending him because I do agree, it's a very, very long ass movie, but like I never felt bored. I never felt, I mean, The Brutalist, different story, but like much different story. But with this one, I just like, I felt like everything just fit in perfectly. And, you know, he can't make it a mini series, so might as well make it a really long ass movie in 2 parts. And I think he did it because that's what he was, and that's what movies should be, is everyone's artistic expression and not having to like give in to what some people are saying. But also, I can totally understand how there's just too much. It's too much. But I also don't really know editing. I edit self-tapes. I edit dance music. That's kind of the extent of that. So like, in my opinion, the editing could have been a bit more on the dancers. It could have had a bit more of the choreography included, but, and I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but what I really liked about the choreography is that it felt like John M. Chu was like, this is the shot I want. I want it to only be Ari's chest and up, so make the book interesting. And instead of them choreographing this masterpiece and then seeing one person's hair going back and forth, they made the decision to have that whole book sequence. And that's, you know, that's like the viral piece of choreography. It's so simple, but it's so effective.
And that's why I'm so shocked that editing in terms of award season for Wicked was never really a mainstay. I mean, first, it's a musical that's usually editing bait, but like what you're saying there is they're editing perfectly on cue. Sure, there's the prime examples of what is this feeling, but like that's in your face. But the rest of the film too, regardless of it's a up-tempo musical number, if it's a slower one, or if it is some of the dialogue scenes, I feel like they're cutting on the perfect moment throughout. Not a moment too soon, not a moment too late. And I get some of the pacing problems, but for me, I would equate that more to the screenplay of adding in new things and choosing what to focus your time more so on than compared to the editing where they're given the clips and they choose, this is the shot I want to use. So if Chu says, hey, I want this shot, they choose when to cut to it. And I feel like the editing inside the musical sequences here is some of the best musical editing we've had maybe since La La Land.
See, I agree. It is a screenplay problem. However, the editor does have the power to say, we don't need this. We don't need this.
But I think it goes back to what Ciarra was saying, is that clearly Chu and the creative team behind Wicked went out to make a film for them and people who are going to love this regardless. Maybe that is a pro, maybe that is a con, maybe your goal in making an adaptation should be to expand the audience, but clearly Wicked from the stage show is very much a you love it or hate it type thing. And I just think it's interesting that I went from hating it on stage and the film has so much fan servicey stuff that doesn't really do anything for me. I don't care about the Yellow Brick Road. I didn't jump out of my seat during one short day, but I was just in awe of, and I know we'll talk about this in Snubs later for cinematography, I think the camera movement inside this film is so cool. I love the way they block some of the scenes, and I think the acting really elevates what the original story was. So it's always intriguing to see, like, it's like the MCU stuff. It's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Don't like the movie, but it's so cool they're referencing that, where I'm like, I don't know what you're referencing, but I just think the movie's cool.
To that point, it is a love letter to fans, and I do, as much as some of the fan servicey stuff bugs me, I do think that there's something to be said for not trying to make your movie as mass marketable as possible in every moment.
For whatever reason, whether it's the upcoming For Good coming out later this year, or the fact that it's a musical, or some of the visual choices inside of Wicked, I feel like it's probably destined to not win any major above the line prizes. Pictures out of the question, the acting's out of the question, no screenplay nomination. But there's at least two categories almost for the whole year, even when people thought this movie was shit, that it had locked down for nominations, and now they seem very likely for wins. And I mean, even from the trailer, we could see the massive, colorful buildings of the production design. And I'm very happy that this has actually come to fruition, and it's seeming like it is going to win the Oscar, because, like, I mean, like, they have Munchkinland, and they put a whole new spin on it like we've never seen it before. And I love the giant Wicked Witch statue that gets burned down in the opening musical number. Every time I've watched, like, that's so cool. Like, how do you come up with that, and then how do you pull it off to work? And in addition, like, we have the Emerald City too, and like, it's green and so visually striking, and the spectacle of what I was hoping the stage production would have, the film did that and said, we can do it so much better than what you've ever seen before.
I loved the production design. I feel like everything, all 3 years that I've been on your show, I feel like every time I'm like, as a dancer, I see it this way. I love being on a set. I love being there. I like to be in it. I like to be enthralled in the world. And coming from so many production, or not that I've been on these sets, but watching videos of different productions where they're like, look, we have an LED wall and now we don't even have to build a set. It feels so silly to me, because the feeling of actually being in that room is so different. Like, even with Agatha All Along this year, they built that set and you could feel the difference between that and an LED wall.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're super cool.
Screen.
Or blue screen. All of those. I feel like it just goes to show that the physicality of being in the space brings so much. And even with the choreography, they were able to be on things and turning things like that. The Dancing Through Life sequence with green screens would have been ridiculous, because they were using the set. The set became a part of it, and without the set, the number didn't make sense. And I feel like with the production design of Wicked, it just elevated everything, and it made everything so grand and so wonderful. And I remember seeing when people, like, I think it was during the like pandemic, where people would get videos of like Ari in the bubble and you could see onto the set.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
like, it looked massive, and that was my first inkling of like, maybe it's going to be something, and then I had to like calm myself down just in case it wasn't something, and I'd have to like smile for my grandma.
Like, I've seen so many times, I think Ian McKellen, sorry to reference Lord of the Rings again, but Ian McKellen, when he was brought back for The Hobbit, I heard stories that he cried because he was on a blue screen the whole time, and he was just like, I feel like I'm acting at clouds. Like, I feel like I'm just shouting.
Yeah, even
at
some
nothing.
videos of like Marvel movies where they're like on a rock, and all sitting on a rock, and then it turns out to be like Wakanda, and I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
Like, we're actors, yes, but like,
Well, it just makes it feel like there's so much more love going into the film. And it also, since we're thinking of Wicked as like not just a tribute to the Broadway show, but also a tribute to golden age Hollywood musicals, right? Like it's calling back to the Freed unit of MGM. It's calling back to the Wizard of Oz, those Technicolor musicals. They didn't have LED screens or blue screens to play with. They
They used
built,
asbestos for the
yeah, they built everything. They painted everything. And here it's like
the
it's
same way that
very,
Barbie was just different
yeah,
because they
Barbie is
did it
exactly the
like
same.
physically.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tribute to the days of old when they actually had to build things. They had to put the effort in.
Yeah, just because it's easier to do it one way doesn't mean it's better.
Mhm. I
It
I
sounds so old.
yeah, I mean it's definitely easier to just do it all
Oh,
in post, to
100%.
fix it in post. But I think it pays off more to build stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and also, I mean, we'll talk about VFX later, but I think they did use VFX to amplify it, not to create it. Which is what VFX should be. It should not be to build the entire world, but to heighten it a little bit. But here, I think I don't want to talk about Shiz at all. I just want to point out the work in the Emerald City, because I think that that's the centerpiece. One Short Day is the centerpiece of the whole movie in my mind for the production design, because it's very difficult to build a fictional city and make it feel like somewhere that actually people can live. That's always been a problem with the Emerald City and all Wizard of Oz media, is that it feels like a painted set that's a bunch of buildings, but no one actually lives there except for the wizard. That's what it has always felt like. And so it was breathtaking to me that in One Short Day, the way that they take them from place to place, we see the different shops, we see the busyness of this city. It's the first time ever that the Emerald City has actually felt like a place that people could live. And it's one of the rare times in movies that a fictional city in like a magic world actually feels like an inhabited place. And I think that
Yeah.
really goes to the design elements that they built for it.
And it's funny too, because people have, I love Disney parks and I love theme parks.
Mhm.
And it's just like a weird obsession of mine. And everyone has always said that there needs to be a Wizard of Oz themed like park. And it's never worked because there has been. Oh, we have a guest. She has opinions too. Uh, not she, the cat doesn't have opinions about Disney. Um, and I was never really on board because I kind of felt the same thing. Like, what would it be? How would you even do this? Whereas with Wicked, sorry, I'll say that again. Whereas with Wicked, I can actually see it being like a full successful section of a theme park. Like Universal's building a third park. Like, come on, Epic, let's have like
Yeah.
a whole
Epic
area.
Universe could
Like
do.
the way that they did Harry Potter is just incredible. And they could literally, but the greatest thing is that they don't even have to come up with most of it. They could just bring the set.
Like production design, costume design is a major triumph inside of Wicked. From Glinda's mini outfits to Elphaba's iconic black attire, like every choice is bold, it's so stylish, and it feels like something these characters would actually wear. That's always a problem I sometimes have with like fantasy type films. Is you put them in these outfits, but the actors don't feel like they either feel comfortable or they don't look like they should be wearing that stuff. Because I mean, like Glinda, like she's got so much pink, it's so lavish, and it's in every outfit from her school attire to her nightgown. And then Elphaba, on the other hand, proves, like in the film they say, that black is this year's pink with like these iconic elements like the boots, the hat, the trench coats. It all works so well, and it's not just these characters, it's the ensemble as well. I'm very excited to see how they step it up or change it up for part two, because they film both of these back to back, and I guess that's the thing with sequels all the time is we see in the first one, what are you going to do different next time around?
I can see so many little girls coming to my dance studios like Halloween week next year as Glinda and Elphaba. Like I can see it. It's so easy to see them in it. And I feel like, I don't know why today when we were talking about costumes, I kept thinking of Mary Queen of Scots because I feel like those costumes were just weird.
That is an absurd pull.
I don't know. But seeing those costumes, I'm like, I don't know. I can't see, or even to harken it back to Harry Potter, or even like Game of Thrones, I don't see people dressing as those characters. I see them like with inspired outfits, but no one's dressing as them. But I can see it in drag. I can see it for animals. I can see it for children. I can see it for adults. Everyone is going to be Elphaba and Glinda because of how wonderfully the costumes are created, and they're not they're not in your face
Mhm.
about it. It's just it's so simple, but they're very, very effective. And I could say so many things about the costumes as I clearly have.
I think the costume design is gorgeous here, and I was given a full other sort of layer of understanding of it by YouTube videos that you watch. I just want to say Glinda's dresses, fantastic. My favorite moment in the whole movie is in Popular when Ariana gets on the ground and starts like swimming around as she's doing the la la, like that whole sequence. And it just looks like she's swimming in the poofiness of her dress. Love that. And also something that I learned from the videos and everything of the costumes at Universal Studios. There's such little details on Elphaba's costumes, like the way that they stitch it. You can see such small details that just give texture to the outfit. So it's not just a black dress or a black jacket. There's always so much more going on to it. There's layers in the costume design, and I think it's just phenomenal work. It's up there with the best of the decade, in my opinion. So let's talk about the makeup work for a little bit, because obviously the hair work is very impressive. I'll let you guys talk about that more. What I think stands out about the makeup work here is consistency, because it's not overly impressive to just make someone green. I don't think it's like mind blowing in the way that anything in the substance is like, God damn, how did they do that stuff? There's nothing here that makes me say, how did they do that? The thing that's just so impressive about the makeup is that every single day, every day on set, they had to make Cynthia Erivo green. And they had to do it the exact same way every single time. Every single pore had to be perfect, because if there was one mistake, everyone would notice. And I think it's just, yeah, it's the freckles as well. Everything is just phenomenally consistent. And that's what I find so impressive about the makeup work in this. It's not that it's flashy in any way. It's just really solid work.
I think my favorite part is a lot of the time coming at it from as a girl. A lot of the time I feel when we're representing like teenagers or university students and the makeup they would do, it's stuff that I myself would never do, or I would never see my friends doing it, or I never went to high school. Like a lot of the time when they have 20 somethings playing high schoolers and they're wearing these outfits that I'm like, I would never, why are you wearing that? I feel like everything that the students in Glinda and Elphaba are wearing, though it is a little ridiculous, with obviously I'm not going to wear what Bowen Yang is wearing, but it's still realistic enough to where I can believe that they are real people.
I mean, insert the clip, you're green, but beyond that, I mean, the work they're doing on Elphaba's hair is just really well done. And, like, it feels natural, it feels authentic, and it's like what The Little Mermaid did a few years ago. It's real stuff, and it's actual representation. But I mean, like, going over to the makeup side of things, what they're doing with Ariana Grande, it's very Barbie-esque makeup, which very much fits that character. And I like the little details, like Jeff Goldblum's wizard's mustache or the Munchkin's curly hair. Like, it's little things that makes Oz and makes Shiz feel like lived in communities. And I think that's a very important thing with this. And I know I've mentioned this before, and we've all kind of mentioned this throughout. Like, if you're watching a movie and one aspect of like a fantasy or like a period movie's off, it's going to really kill your interpretation, your believability of everything. But there's walking goats here. I know that's visual effects, but like, I never for a second believed that none of these people actually.
Something that really caught my attention lately was when Ariana Grande did a Q&A with Billie Eilish at SAG, and she mentioned how the sound team mic'd up the space as though it was a recording studio, so that no matter where around the set they were, they always had recording quality that would have been the same as what Ariana Grande would expect when she goes into the studio to record something like Thank You Next. And I think that a lot can be said about the live vocal recording here. And we've seen this technique done on so many other films. The first one that I can remember doing the live recording of the vocals was Les Mis. And the whole thing with Les Miserables was that it was meant to make it feel grittier. It was meant to make it feel more theatrical, as though you are there with them and they are performing for you, rather than it being these high quality produced versions of the songs. In Wicked, they're using that recording technique. They're using that live vocal recording, but because of the way that the sound team mic'd up the set, you would never believe that this is not recorded in a studio. It is phenomenally clean audio, and I think it's just exceptionally well done to think of how many mics that they would have had to use, and how much audio the sound team on the post-production side would have been working with to piece something like this together.
By recording them singing live, it added a level of depth to their emotions that I feel like recording in a studio just wouldn't have. Like going into Defying Gravity, you know that clip of the two of them singing while they hold the broom and it's
Mhm.
like a cappella and it's just beautiful. They wouldn't have been able to get that same amount of resonance. And I think that's how their performances and their singing melded so well together. It wasn't just they were acting and now they're singing, but they recorded this 2 months ago and they have to sing it the way that they recorded it 2 months ago, even though they've discovered new things about their characters.
Yes.
In the moment, that is how they're feeling. And I think that's what's so brilliant, even just about their performances. And I can, even like La La Land, I love that movie. It is my favorite movie, probably of all time, and will forever be. But there is a difference between when Emma Stone is talking and when she's singing, and you can
Yes.
tell.
But honestly, if Dune Part 2 didn't exist, Wicked would be my winner for Best Sound. Like, yes, you can point to the fantastic work for these musical numbers. You can point to the fact that they sing live on set with no backing vocals like you're all talking about. But I think another aspect that makes the sound work here so fantastic is the non-musical moments. I think of the first time Elphaba walks into Shiz and you hear her boots smack the ground and you can hear the echoes of everyone just being disgusted by looking at her. Why is she walking in here? And that moment hits so hard, especially like when I watch in Dolby or in IMAX, and still here watching at home. And like there's so many great small moments of sound throughout, from like flying on the broomstick to the Ozdust ballroom, and like all these moments makes it feel more lived. And that's the same thing. That's the same thing I keep saying in all these categories. Is like all these technical elements are working together to make Oz, making Shiz, making this whole film feel like a real place, even though it's set in a fantasy world. This is such a deserved nomination. But jumping over to a nomination I think almost everyone thinks is not deserved would be Best Original Score, because like the music of Wicked the movie is good, but it's based on themes and songs from the show. And like if Dune Part 2 can't reuse themes from the first film, why can Wicked do it and still be eligible to get the nomination when Dune Part 2 is doing the same thing, but probably better and more memorable?
Yeah, this is such bullshit. This is such fucking bullshit, this score nomination. I think that the rules are just so twisted when this score can make it in and Dune can't. But for the record, I think neither should be able to make it. I think that they were right in disqualifying Dune 2 because the category is original score, and so much of Dune 2's score, but like so much of the Dune Part 2 score is taking from the first one. Yes, there are new themes, but they are building on what the foundation of the first one was. And with this, with Wicked, like the whole thing, every bit of music in this is music that was used in the Broadway show. It's all from 2003. It's either orchestrations from the Broadway show or it's adaptations of the songs to create underscore.
Well, for our 10th and final nomination of Wicked, we have Best Visual Effects. And Matt, I think you said it perfectly earlier on. It's helping amplify these sets and expanding them out. There's this whole conversation around AI right now. And I think visual effects kind of works in tandem with that. Like, when it's completely generative AI or visual effects, where it's making things that aren't actually there. Sure, you can kind of make issues with that, but when it's using to expand what we already have, clean it up, make it look more vivid, more imaginative, that's the good stuff. And Wicked, I think, is doing that, just like Napoleon last year. It's expanding the sets, making them feel wider, larger for a lot of more people that you may not be seeing physically on screen. My cat just jumped on the table, but yeah, this nomination, I have no issues with it.
Yeah, first off, Napoleon sneak right there. You thought we wouldn't notice? You thought we wouldn't notice the Napoleon sneak? Anyways, though, I mean, I've seen a lot of people be really negative about the visual effects in Wicked, but I think the work is really solid, you know? It's not like it's creative VFX or anything. It's not like I've never seen anything like this done before, but it looks good. It sells the world of the film. I never think too much about it. I never notice it above all else. And I do think, you know, maybe controversially, that the CGI animals are at least on par with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
I'm a huge Marvel fan. I watch Marvel TV, I watch
Mhm.
Marvel movies.
We're going to see Captain America:
We're
Brave New World after this.
literally gonna go see a big
Uh,
red angry man. So that being said, I've seen some bad CGI, I've seen some bad VFX, and they don't really ever bother me other than just kind of make me chuckle. But I do understand how difficult it is and how making a goat sing and talk to a human is not the most realistic thing ever, but it has been done, and it's the whole world kind of looks fantastical in a way to where it's believable. If you had a talking goat in like my apartment right now, it would be really hard to make
or
it
in the
realistic.
Brutalist.
Or in the yeah, a talking goat in the Brutalist, I might have enjoyed it. I didn't hate the Brutalist. Sorry, I'm just being brutal. Yikes. But I think it was done well. Could it have been done better?
Other areas that Wicked could have gotten a little bit more acclaim for in the conversation for award season at large, and I think one of them is our Critics' Choice winner for Best Director, John M. Chu. Because, like, how do you win such a major precursor? You can't even make the final five at the Oscars, and, like, sure, there's a blockbuster bias at play, but there's also people who simply just did not like Wicked. If you've seen our series so far, it typically is near the bottom of our guest preferential ballot, and a large part of the reason why a lot of people don't like Wicked, and some of the reasons why I do like Wicked, is the choices of the direction of this film from top to bottom. It can be the visual style, it can be the story's narrative, it can just be how this world is created from top to bottom. And I, for one, really liked it because in tandem with his direction and the cinematography, which also has been getting shat on throughout, let me rephrase that, has been getting shizzed on throughout this awards season. The camera movements are so well done. I love the One Short Day sequence. It feels like we're there standing with Elphaba and Glinda in the streets watching this performance. The camera moves as if it's a character just walking through the streets, and it can be said throughout the rest of the film as well. No One Mourns the Wicked and Dancing Through Life also have very great visual styles to them, despite the overt criticism for the backlighting. Like, sure, that is an issue, but like, it doesn't ruin the whole experience for me, like some people out there kind of have said for it.
I mean, John M. Chu, like I said right at the top, he made me forget that I don't really like Wicked. Just the same way that Stephen Schwartz's music, I think, makes a lot of people forget that this story's kind of dumb. I think on top of that, John Chu's direction just sweeps you away in the visual choices that he's making. Is every choice correct? No, it's weird to make something that's a tribute to Technicolor and make it so devoid of color. I mean, you've got the most colorful sets imaginable. Why is your color grade like mud? Why are you doing that? Make it colorful, make it pop, make it look great. But he is doing a fantastic job of making it cinematic. He's just phenomenal at creative visual storytelling, specifically in the musical format. And I think he's really a great director that I can't wait to see more of in the musical space. So I think one thing as well that I know you've been very, very like strongly advocating for
Three
is
times
that
now.
yeah, there needs to be a choreography award. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear
I'm
your take on the Wicked's choreography.
so again, as a dancer, as a choreographer, as a dance educator, I always find my favorite thing about films is the choreography or the stunt choreography. I always think it makes the films better. I think it's a big deal. It still bothers me for that 2 minutes that La La Land won Best Picture that they didn't even mention the choreographer at all. It irks me that only now, this year, we have a choreography guild. This is the first year a choreography guild has existed. We have never had it before. Up until now on IMDb, you can find us with the people that make craft services, which craft services, love them. They're important. It is important to eat on set, but it is also important to thank the choreographers. I love that Colin Farrell thanked craft services. I think that's amazing because they are vital on set. But a movie without a choreographer, like a movie like this, there's a reason that Wicked is so visually appealing. And let alone the coloring, sure, whatever. That has nothing to do with the choreography. But it is this visually appealing. And the reason Wicked went viral is that book choreography that Christopher Scott did. Like, and that video of Will Loftus with Ariana Grande. That is the viral thing. And without these specific choreographers, it would not have been that way. It would have been different. Every choreographer that you hire, you're getting something different out of. And I love the combination of Comfort, Will Loftus, Christopher Scott. I grew up watching them choreograph. I grew up experiencing what they were and seeing their work on the dance stage. So seeing their work in this film was unreal. And the choreography is brilliant. And it's a shame. It is a giant crying shame that they will not be at the Oscars,
Mm-hmm.
even though the movie is nominated for Best Film.
Well, this weekend it's nominated at SAG for Stunt Ensemble, and if it were to win, that would in a way be acknowledging the choreography of it.
Yeah, but that's like voice acting and acting. You could put that together. I love stunt. I love combat. It was my favorite class in college to do film stunts. Phenomenal stuff. The things that people can do are outstanding. It's beyond Tom Cruise. Like Tom Cruise is great, but like there is an entire industries of this stuff. And there's people who are trained to do this. If I'm ever offered a role and I can have a stunt double, I will because I'm giving someone who's really good at it a job.
Mhm.
I could do it myself, but I would rather someone get hired for it. And there's all this anyways, I could go on and on with this. I just think choreographers are so vital and dance is so vital in the world, but we give them all the short end of the stick because we're taught to be humble and to be like, I'm just lucky to be in the movie. And it's like, no, like, did you see Dancing Through Life?
Mhm.
Like, that made the movie. And it was, I don't know whose idea it was to do the library thing and all the parkour, but you bet sure as hell that Christopher Scott's the reason that it is the way it is, and that Comfort's the reason it is the way it is. And same with Will Loftus. Like, these are massive voices. And Christopher Scott was in the credits, I will say. But Comfort and Will were in the post-credit credits, the scrolling credits. And that's rare for them to even be in the credits.
There's all this talk of the Academy potentially adding a stunt award, but I fully agree with you. If they ever did it, it should be stunt and choreography. And who knows, maybe it would still be 4-1 in terms of the nominees, but maybe one day we get to be 3-2, and then maybe one day the choreography achievement is the one to win instead of the stunt achievement. Because I think to other years, we keep mentioning La La Land, that would be something that would be worthy of the choreography/stunt award, but didn't even get nominated at SAG. And like Les Mis got nominated, but that's more so for the fight sequences than more so than the dancing sequences. And I'm sure there's countless other musicals.
West Side
or
Story.
Well,
God
even-
damn. Like,
Even 1917, that was a lot of people to get to be doing stunts at different times, and they did it. Like all of those, right? Like it's stunt choreography is hard, and it's just as complicated as dance choreography. So like, just
Yeah.
stick us in the back on a little category.
I think that it's like
Sorry, I interrupted both of you.
I think the thing with stunt choreography is that it's like it is about timing. It is about creating
Angles.
movement and figuring out how to repeat that movement over and over. Yeah.
In new and interesting ways. Stunt choreography is hard.
Now, before we move on to preferential ballot, I just want to hear from you guys and voice my own opinion. What do we expect from the Oscars next year with Wicked for Good? Obviously, we've got the 10 nominations that we talked about this year and the snubs. Do we think that the sequel curse that hit Avatar and Dune will be hitting Wicked for Good, or do we think it'll perform just as well as the first one?
In terms of looking ahead to this upcoming season for Good, I'm guessing it will be somewhere in that like Dune Part 2, Avatar Way of Water range, where it still can find its way into Best Picture as long as they make a good enough film. I think the Goodwill, even if this is a little bit more mixed, will carry it into the 10. And then I think the categories where it's an assured win this time will carry over, so like costume design, production design, and then we'll still see some of those other technical elements like sound. And then that's where the questions start coming from. Will visual effects make it again? Will makeup and hairstyling make it again? Can it surprise and get in anywhere where the first one didn't? Dune surely couldn't this year after we thought maybe it could win some categories. It did not even win last time around. The biggest positive for Wicked for Good is the fact that it comes out in that November range where it's prime right before award season kicks off, but it's not too late like Avatar The Way of Water was, where it was coming out after stuff had already gotten the ball rolling. This way, if the movie is even better than Wicked Part 1, maybe it can improve on nominations and prove the sequel bias wrong, but that's something that I would kind of need to see to believe. I don't believe the acting will repeat, and that's why I was so happy that Erivo did happen this year, because if she didn't get in this year, I don't think she would get in next year just because of the outlook for sequels as a whole. It's the same thing with director, where like, oh, Denis, he missed the first time around, well, he's going to get in this time. And he didn't, even though most people universally agreed he did a better job. And I think that same outcome would have affected Erivo if she didn't get in this time.
I kind of disagree with you on the acting, just because, I do think that Act 2 has more material. at least for Erivo, Elphaba is doing so much more. No, she doesn't have Divine Gravity this time, but No Good Deed, I think, is more of an acting showcase. For Good is more of an acting showcase for both her and Ariana. I don't remember as much what Glinda does in Act Two. I've been told
She kind of
that
just floats around for a bit.
yeah, but I've been told that it's much more emotional. So I think it's possible that she could move off of the winning buzz that she had for this one that did not come to fruition because of Zoe Saldana, and she could potentially be in win contention next year.
I don't know much about the sequel curse or like the monopolizing of films and like
Mm.
what will be nominated and what won't be nominated with the math of it all. But to me, I definitely don't know the second act as well as I know the first. Just even listening to the soundtrack growing up, seeing the show and being like, "Oh, Defying Gravity is the halfway point. Like, what else happens?"
Yeah.
Um, do think a little bit of like Into the Woods, where I do not like the second act of Into the Woods. I think it's silly. I don't understand it. Me and my dad watching that movie, we loved the first half, and then we were like, what? And then I met Matt and he was like, that's one of my favorites. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't get it.
That's that ridiculous opinion, but I get it. I get it.
As a
Act Two
theater
Into the
kid,
Woods, phenomenal. No flaws.
but I do have hope for it. I don't feel as nervous about thinking that it's going to be great as I did for part one. John M. Chu has proven himself to me. I feel like the performances that we got out of Ari and Cynthia Erivo in the first one was only really a preview for the second part.
Mhm.
But there is like Mockingjay, and I do think of like some of the movies where it's just the second part's just not as good. And even how much different is the production design going to be? Is it just the same?
Well, John M. Chu may not make these movies for the awards, but like you said, there all these films have their pros and their cons, regardless if you love them or not. I mean, Matt has Into the Woods, you have the Wicked stage show, and I have Cats. So clearly, there's always an audience out there for something. But that leads us into my favorite part of these Best Picture revisiting episodes, where we hear our guest ranking of the 10 nominees. And I'm guessing your number 10, based on some comments throughout today's episode, may not line up with a lot of people's out there preferred ranking of these films.
So, number 10, I have The Brutalist. I did not like The Brutalist. I'm sorry to all of those fans out there. I have watched a lot. I love World War II movies. I love World War II documentaries. It's my Disney parks. I don't know why. I just love that kind of stuff. My family loves that kind of stuff. I did not like The Brutalist whatsoever. I found the lead to be really annoying. I found that I didn't like him. I didn't understand the story, and at the end I just was left confused. I call them the movies that make me feel dumb, and this was one of the movies where I was like, I feel like the point was if I didn't like it, then I didn't understand film, and like you didn't get it. And sure, I didn't get it. I didn't love it, but I can see where people would like it. It's kind of like Oppenheimer, or the second half of Oppenheimer. For number 9, I have Amelia Perez. I feel like my opinion on this one has been swayed a little bit from the internet world, but I thought it was solid. I really liked it. As I mentioned, I was a big Wizards of Waverly Place fan. Selena Gomez was my first celebrity crush. I think it was a solid movie. Hated the ending. I didn't get it. Felt it was kind of weird. Overall, I don't really remember much about the film except for the penis and vagina song and how much I loved Zoe Saldana, and those two things are not related. Um, but anyways, and then I have Nickel Boys. I actually only saw this for the first time. Was that yesterday? Yes,
Last night.
last night. I only saw Nickel Boys for the first time last night, and I can really, really, really appreciate it. I think that the filmmaking is phenomenal. I think it's beautiful. Yes, when he did that top 10 list and he was showing me all of the different movies and the clips that he was using, the only clips I can remember are The Brutalist when they open the cabinet and every single one from Nickel Boys. I can't remember any of the other ones. Even though I had seen some of those movies. Then I have Conclave. I really liked Conclave. I thought it was great. Honestly, I feel like there's just that solid film every year that's like for the grandmas that everyone just appreciates. No one loves it. No one's a diehard for it, but no one hates it. At least from my very minimal film people interactions every day. I liked it. I thought the performances were great. That's about all I have to say about it. For 6, I have The Substance. It was really good. I imagine if I liked this kind of film, I would have eaten it up. I would have absolutely adored it. probably would have been Margaret Qualley for Halloween. You can choose which version of her I would have been. Um, but it's not for me at all. I spent a lot of that movie behind my computer screen, just plugging my ears. It's not for me, but it doesn't mean that the filmmaking wasn't incredible. It was so good.
Just to interject, when I saw this at Cannes, I immediately texted Ciarra saying, I saw one of the best movies of the year. You are never going to see it. And when it got nominated for Best Picture, I said, I'm sorry, we have to watch it now because you need to do the ranking.
Luckily, by then I had seen the toe, I had seen the head on the shoulder. I had I knew it was coming out of her spine. I still haven't seen that part because I closed my eyes. But it's so well made. And like if that's your kind of shit, it's the shit. Like it's really good. A Complete Unknown is my 5. Similar to Conclave, I can really appreciate it. I think Timothée Chalamet was phenomenal. That's why it's above The Substance, is the performances. I think he putting a little ugly nose on him made him still adorable, but he did such a good job and his singing is so good. And watching him on SNL before I saw the movie, because again, I didn't see any movies until really late this year, I think he's just tremendous and I just adore him. And this movie was very good. Then at number 4, I have Anora. Again, a movie that was wonderful. I love Sean Baker. The Florida Project is one of the first movies we watched where I like really understood cinema. Unless you talk about The Brutalist, then I don't understand it. But I loved Anora for all the reasons that I loved it. And I also feel like it wasn't made for me. It just isn't the kind of film that I understand or that I can really see myself in, which I love when I can see myself in movies. And unfortunately, I do have that bias of like, if it doesn't feel like me, then I don't feel it. I don't appreciate it. And that's kind of this one. Like, really amazing. Maggie Madison is phenomenal. I'm so excited to see her in more. It just wasn't made for me. Dune Part 2, I thought was great. I love action films. I am not a chick flick person. I am all about action. I love Marvel. I love all of those things. I think Dune Part 2 is just phenomenal. I was shocked by I'm Still Here. I know Matt had talked about it. I knew that the Brazilians were all over it, and I love that. I love when people can get behind something. This movie floored me. The performances floored me. I was so into it. I thought it was just beautifully crafted. Every single aspect of this film was just a big, huge yes for me. I think that this movie was just phenomenal, and I understand why an entire country is, in agreement together that this is just wonderful, because I agree with them. And then number 1, I just have to say it, favorite movie of the year, A Real Pain. It's so good. I'm gonna cry. Is Wicked. Obviously, I loved Wicked. I think this year was not a year of films that I just could die for, but Wicked was phenomenal. Choreography was phenomenal. I love that the blockbuster was getting a little, it melded with that serious artsiness of the Oscars, and I think it's just, you don't get that every time a movie musical comes out, and I'm just so glad that Wicked has all of that. And A Real Pain should have been nominated. I'm sorry. That's my number 1. Choreographers deserve Oscar nominations and to be invited. That's it.
Thanks for joining.
Adrian Brody is really good.
Brody good. Movie bad.
I think he's great.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me again. Very fun.
That's a wrap on episode 9 of our 2025 Best Picture Revisiting series. Here's the current combined leaderboard for both our guest and Matt and I's preferential ballot. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, where a professional in the sound industry will be joining us to discuss Nickel Boys.